Hello again, and welcome back to the channel. I really enjoy making these list/ranking explainer videos, so I figured I'd do another one where I take a look at even more analog horror entities you could definitely beat. If you do a good browse for analog horror on YouTube, you can find a lot of creatures you can confidently beat. Efforts may vary, but it's definitely possible with a lot of these. And so we'll be taking a look at 7 analog horror entities from 7 analog horror videos and series. Would you actually lose against them? And if you enjoy the video, why not consider subscribing so you don't miss out on more of these videos? Check out my second channel Soda Jump, where a friend and I get goofy playing video games and doing some IRL things, linked in the description. I'll also have the links to what I discuss in the description for you to check out if they spark your interest. Oh, and of course, at the end of the video, I'll rank all of these entities from least to most powerful. Because, in the reality of things, you'd still have to put up a fight of varying difficulty to beat these, and you may be injured in the process. My knee ligaments know all too well about being injured and not being properly compensated for it. Hey, accidents happen, especially when these things are around. That's where this video's sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, can assist you if you become their client. After all, when you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. They achieved significant verdicts in the past couple of months for victims involved in life-altering car crashes. For example, $12 million in Florida, 34 times the highest insurance offer, and $26 million in Philadelphia. That's 40 times the highest insurance offer. Bam! And the best part about this is that it's absolutely free unless you win. And it only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case. Morgan & Morgan is for the people. They'll fight to get you the money you deserve, if you become their client. And if you ever got seriously injured, your case could be worth millions and you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. It's so easy. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/sunflower, found in the description, or by scanning the QR code on screen with your phone's camera. Now, with all of that being said, let's dive into even more analog horror entities you could definitely beat. To start things off, I wanted to take a look at the entities found within the game Try to Fall Asleep, made by Amberdrop. I've talked about this game before in my Super Mario's Analog Horror Just Got More Disturbing video, and the reason I bring up all of this is because the game has an analog horror series tied to it found on a YouTube channel called Lucid. To put things simply, in the game, you play as a man named John Heron who survived a bad accident that left him with brain damage and memory loss. By falling asleep, you can rediscover his past, memories, and the mysterious revival company. It's not as easy as it sounds, since hallucinations will haunt John and make it hard for him to sleep, which might actually kill him. This brings us to Lucid, a mysterious figure exposing the nightmarish secrets hidden within the revival company archive tapes. We have 3 videos which cover 1 tape each, so a total of 3 tapes to look at. Each tape has a brief introduction followed by a summary of the creature highlighted in that tape and its history with revival, and then footage of researchers trying to find the escaped creature and the aftermath of that. The third video is a bit different, but that's the gist of it. Without spoiling too much, tape 1 is about the Mergs, a genetically engineered carnivore made to protect agricultural land. Tape 2 focuses on Copper, a heavily wounded soldier turned cyborg, to see if the enhancements would improve his condition, and Tape 3 highlights Osor, a mole rat-like creature and the sole surviving member of its species. Now, these creatures may look scary, and they definitely will jump you and catch you off guard. Ah! Oh! What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? God, that was just... I have never jumped or screamed because of a game like that before. Anyway, you could definitely beat these entities. The revival company made a bunch of errors that got people killed, among other things. Firstly, the workers at Revival seem ill-equipped for their job. Someone abuses Mergs, and that's why it escapes, and Copper overhears the plans to kill it and escapes. Not properly training the staff to handle these entities are what led to these incidents. So, say you're up against these creatures who are running around your local area because of these guys, what should you do? Well, since they're a local threat, conventional weapons will do the trick. Getting in close to swing a weapon at them may be risky because they're enhanced creatures, but any sort of long-range fight against them is heavily in your favor. So is hiding in your family house or any sort of building while other people deal with the entities. Because in the end, they can be felled. Just make sure you're thorough in your method of disposing of the bodies because you wouldn't want them to get back up now, would you? How does the revival company get that part so wrong? They kind of remind me of the SCP Foundation, except they don't have the immense resources and power, so that might explain their faults. Now for Osor, the more rat-like creature, things have to be approached differently. Our biggest advantage would be its biggest weaknesses, its lack of sight and the fact that it exists on an isolated island. Knowing that it exists on the island and using sound to our advantage would be the key for beating it. Simply put, loud noises that may draw it out or even immobilize it would be great ways to subdue it before taking it out with a long-range weapon. After all, you want to minimize danger to humans during this process. Staying around open areas or the beaches would give you an advantage as well, as it would be easier to spot Osor lurking around. The sand and the sound of the ocean waves can dampen the sounds of you walking too. It is also noted to have an aggressive nature, so it might make its presence known to you early, and might try to attack you in a simple rushdown manner. Use all of that to your advantage, and take advantage of modern technology and strength in numbers, and you can definitely beat them all. Next up, we have GÜBY Friends. This is a series created by the channel of the same name, and it follows the titular character GÜBY and his friends as they teach kids the things you usually see in kids' TV shows. However, this is an analog horror, so the cracks begin to show very quickly. Now the entity here is GÜBY, but isn't? GÜBY and his friends in the show are themselves, granted, very corrupted versions, but it's the real-life GÜBY that we have to worry about, the unknown man. He's present here and there, usually in a few frames in a video or two, but he's a very important character to the whole mystery of what's happening on this show and series. Missing children and disturbing themes and images are littered throughout each video, whether that be quickly flashed on screen or not. So it would seem that the GÜBY Friends TV show had enough of a following for a live show of sorts to be created for it as well. Which, if you're not paying attention and looking at things frame by frame, you may actually miss. Who the unknown man behind the mask is up for debate as well, but it's safe to assume that he made the GÜBY TV show. Combine this with the missing children and it paints a really disturbing picture. That the unknown man created a show for kids to kidnap them and do unspeakable things to them. It explains why the channel's about section states GÜBY is not made for kids over and over again as a possible way to protect them and for parents to keep their kids away from the show. It could also explain why the show is so corrupted. Symbolically, it's like a corruption of the youth, the missing children, once they're taken away by the unknown man, which just makes my skin crawl. So with all of that context, you know what that means. Get the 12 gauge ready, since after all, GÜBY is just a guy, but, you know, just a guy that wants to take away yours and anyone else's children. Fuck that. But obviously, there are precautions that you can take, especially if you're not going down the route of taking the law into your own hands. If you're an adult, you're not a target, so that would be your biggest advantage in this situation, but it's only really an advantage if you suspect or know that the unknown man is doing what he's doing. But if a bunch of kids go missing in the area, it would be all over the news and investigations would have to find some sort of correlation with GÜBY Friends. Surely, right? So if you have kids, protect them. If they go to some GÜBY Friends live action show, don't let them go backstage with who they think is GÜBY, especially if there's no other adults there. Go with them and make sure nothing happens, even without a huge reason to suspect any wrongdoing. It's just a no-brainer, but if you do have reason and suspicion for wrongdoing, if you're told not to accompany your kid backstage to hang out with GÜBY, then it's really just all confirmed. Nothing good can come out of that. And legally speaking, you could take the unknown man down and get him imprisoned, but it would be hard to do so without proper proof of ill intent. You'd have to catch them in the act of abducting a child or doing something to them at a live show or anywhere really. Even then, that still puts a child or children at risk. Regardless of that, he's just a guy, so you could very easily take the law into your own hands, like I've already said. Protect yourself, your kids if you have kids, anyone else you want to protect, and act accordingly and you can definitely beat him. He's no one that's crazy famous and doesn't seem to have bodyguards or protection, so it's only a matter of time. Moving on, we have Life Meat by BKRB. I've wanted to cover this analog horror for a while now, and I thought that now would be a perfect time to do so. It's one of those videos that doesn't show its whole hand to you and leaves a lot to the imagination and leaves you with questions at the end of it. It's so good and juicy, unlike the meat in the video, the entity, Life Meat. Just look at this smooth and textureless meat. It looks like it would be crunchy and stale in taste, and I get that feeling because it's synthetic meat. Already, that sets a very dystopian setting, and not only that, but there seems to be some sort of issues with the meat. A pathogen of some kind. Things seem hopeless, but you could definitely beat Life Meat. Which sounds funny to say, especially since now I realize it just sounds like I'm saying you could definitely beat your meat, but the pathogen within it is clearly deadly, but there is a way. Firstly, the best way to stay safe and away from Life Meat is to simply just not buy it. It's synthetic meat and it looks bad. I know people buy foods that look and taste bad, but that's for convenience sake. And that's the issue. Convenience. It's convenience to just mass produce meat for profit versus raising cattle, killing them, and then selling their meat. But there has to be a reason for it, right? It looks like the animals have been dying out for years. But why? We don't get an answer, but it's safe to assume something has been taking them out, like a disease or a pathogen? If you really wanted meat, and I mean proper meat, you could definitely start your own small farm for meat products. Chickens would be the easiest to manage and they make eggs, but any sort of cattle works too. However, alternatives to meat would be your safest bet. There doesn't seem to be an issue with fish meats since there's no synthetic version of them, so that would be a great alternative. I know I love the taste of fish and marine life. You could also eat replacements like jackfruit, tofu, beans, and other soy-based fruits. Ugh. But if it's either plant-based solutions or the sketchy synthetic meat riddled with a pathogen, I think the choice should be clear. It's really a choice of pick your poison in that regard, with one poison being way worse than the other, and I say that because I'm just a giant meathead. But thank goodness for fish, and good luck to our astronauts trying to colonize Mars too if Life Meat is what they're eating up there in space. The Life Meat ad is dated back to 1986 too, so it really makes you wonder what had to have happened for things to get this bad. Like I've already pointed out, fortunately for us, we have marine life we can live off of and plant-based alternatives. Mix that with a well-balanced diet and life shouldn't be altered too much. A better way to solve world hunger and a way to hold those accountable for Life Meat would need to go underway too, since that's what Life Meat was reportedly made for, and poisoning populations shouldn't go unchecked, right? Right? For the next entity, we have the one found in Malbolge Trench by Cheech Burrito, and this entity can be found in the first video in the series. We get a nice little introduction to our oceans and what we can expect to find in them at certain depths. And then we get to Malbolge Trench that beats all of them in depth by a long shot. That's where we can also find our entity, this stringy being with the warped head and face of a human. What it is unknown, and what it could do to a human or any kind of creature for that matter is unknown too. It's best to assume that anything that's able to survive extremely deep underwater and looks like this is nothing to be messed with. We'd be heavily out of our depths here. To even get to that depth, a human would need to descend in an extremely durable vessel of some kind slowly and at intervals to account for underwater pressure, and the same on the way up needs to happen too. That's putting things very lightly and in a very basic way. So, say we do get an individual or a group of people down there with resources to survive. Now what? We don't have submersible vessels that can maneuver swiftly or use quick and versatile weaponry. The ocean is not our territory and we can try our best, but it would be a miracle if a crew took out the entity and were able to get back to the surface without any issues. The next best option would be to send remote-controlled vessels underwater to take care of things, or at the very least, scope things out. However, if this being is intelligent, we might incur its wrath in one way or another. So the best course of action in beating it would be to stay well away from it in this scenario. But if it did show itself in shallow waters or around humans, it would need to be dealt with if it was a threat. Same goes for anything else that might come from Malbolge Trench. So leave it alone in its turf and act when it gets around people and endangers them. Modern weaponry looks like it would be perfectly effective against it. It's a weird and stringy creature after all, and if the change in pressure from the bottom of the ocean to land or shallow water doesn't kill it, we sure as hell will. Moving on from here, we have EAS scenario Keep the Lights On by Arid. The entity in this video is a tall and lanky humanoid. Ironic considering my previous video talking about how overused these kinds of entities can be when they're presented in this type of manner. But that's not what we're here to discuss and dissect. We're here to look at how we can beat this thing. 59 people are missing in the span of 12 hours, and the entity can cause nausea, anxiety, and unease in people. This obviously happens when it's around and you're the target. The video gives us a great suggestion on how to keep safe. It says that attacks have happened in the darker and unlit places of the house. So the first step you need to take to keep yourself safe and beat the entity is to keep your house bright to minimize and eliminate the possibility of the creature appearing in your home. The EAS also gives us a very strange bit of information that's supposed to help us, but might actually end up endangering the lives of tens or hundreds of people. You see, those feelings of anxiety, nausea, and uneasiness are obviously the doings of the entity, passively or not. And we're told that if you feel uneasy, you should go to the hospital. Hell, you may feel uneasy and scared if you know that this thing is roaming around and that might be the cause of your feelings. That makes sense, but what if you are feeling that uneasiness because the creature has been around you and sees you? If you head to the hospital, then you're most likely bringing it there too. The same can be said if you've actually seen it. It seems like that's a death sentence because the EAS states that if you've seen it and you feel any of the already stated ailments, distance yourself from people, be ready to face the creature, and give everyone else time to escape. If you find yourself in that situation, you need to prepare yourself to beat the entity. Modern weaponry? It's your friend here, and if you can utilize your right to bear arms, then do so. The fact that this creature appears in dark places around homes or anywhere really might mean that it has some sort of supernatural powers, or that it's extremely sneaky. But if you were to bunker up, anticipate and wait for it to appear in front of you or around you, you definitely have a chance. Strength in numbers is your friend here too, for the obvious reason that we're stronger in groups. But in this case, you'd really need some capable people. These tactics can and should be applied even if you aren't being targeted. Of course, you don't have to antagonize the entity or bait it to you, but preparing for a fight is a very smart move. The same kind of strategies can be used in another one of Cheesh Burrito's videos, Found Footage E4 Emergency Broadcast System Analog Horror. I say this because the entity highlighted in the broadcast is a tall and lanky humanoid. Things are presented to us in the same format, but this time, the entity is red and can manipulate technology to appear from it. Hide your kids, hide your wife, hide yourself and anyone else you're with. Turn off all technological devices and arm yourself for an engagement with the entity. There are so many similarities between the previous Keep the Lights On entity and this one, which is why I said that you could employ the previously discussed strategies. And that brings me back to my previous video on humanoid entities. Sometimes they're just so similar that they begin to blend in with each other because the videos follow the same copy and paste formula. You know how it goes, things start off with a warning, the entity is established, and what to do and what not to do is told to us. And because that's what we're being shown here, there really isn't much to say or discuss when it comes to beating it that I haven't said in the previous Keep the Lights On entity breakdown. But we can't just end the video here. I have a bonus entity found in Onigiri Cat's Analog Horror Happy Child video. You're probably looking at what's on screen and thinking that it's extremely similar to the last two videos we've seen. Yes, the presentation is similar, but what's found within is different. What's interesting about the video is the entity, a child. Not just any child, but a manufactured one you can adopt. They'll act like a human child, and you can raise them and enjoy your company with them. It doesn't seem like they'd age either, which is a bit dystopian, but it's just an assumption considering that this is a manufactured child you can buy. What's also pretty dystopian and scary is what happens if you can't keep them happy. They'll turn on you and kill you as if you're nothing. Your own happy child that you purchase can do that to you. It's a pretty scary and sad thought that the person you're taking care of has the potential to end your life. I guess you could apply that to anyone like family and friends, but there's trust and human emotions there. You know, things like love and compassion. In the happy child's case, there's what we can assume to be a robot in place of that. Something that acts out of frustration, anger, and lashes out when it doesn't get what it wants or something bad happens to it is something a wild animal does. And that's what it feels like you're inviting into your house when you purchase a happy child. So how do you beat something like this? The simplest and best way would be to not buy a happy child. A lot of the entities in this video are kind of like that, just don't purchase them, don't interact with them, don't do anything with them. Because a product as dangerous as this would need to be taken off of the market, and whoever's involved or responsible for the happy child would expect to face dire consequences. You could also go down the route of taking out the child, therefore beating it. But would you be able to do so? You know, dispose of something that looks like a child? It would be extremely tough on the psyche, but you could definitely beat it. And with that, we're at the part of the video where I rank all of the entities from least to most powerful. I think the most obvious choice for least is life meat. I mean, it's just a can of synthetic meat. It can't make you eat it. You just need the willpower to avoid it and keep yourself safe. After that, just wait it out until those responsible hopefully suffer the consequences of their actions and life meat is taken off of shelves. You could sort of say the same with the unknown man from GÜBY and Friends. You can hope that the law tracks him down and arrests him. You could very easily take the law into your own hands, and you could very easily keep yourself and your kids safe. But that doesn't seem to be the case around Happy Child. If you've bought it, it would only be a matter of time before an incident happened. Your best course of action to beat it would be not to buy it and to hope that the people responsible for making murder machines are given what they deserve. However, legalities might not save you from the entities in Try to Fall Asleep. With how things have been covered up, it would be hard to take the legal route, which is why I didn't highlight it. The entities are genetically heightened and modified, but enough firepower and manpower could definitely beat them. The same could be said for the entity in E4 Emergency. The same can be said for the entity found in Keep the Lights On. It gets a 1-up because of its deadly capabilities we've been made aware of and how it affects its future victims. Which brings us to what we saw in Malbolge Trench. This might be a bit of a strange top pick, but I think it's the most powerful entity in the video purely because of its capability to live in such a low depth underwater. And something like that looks and acts like this is better left in the ocean, therefore beating it. And there you go. That's been even more analog horror entities you could definitely beat. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Would you actually lose against them? What did you think of my strategies and rankings? Let me know in the comment section below. And hey, if you have suggestions for analog horror videos I should take a look at for videos, let me know too. Like, subscribe, and check out my second channel Soda Jump if you want to see more from me. And a big thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. If you want to start your claim, use the link in the description or by scanning the QR code on screen with your phone camera. And as always, we can't forget the shout out to my lovely patrons and YouTube members. And a big shout out to the highest tier Patreon members, Joel Matthew Colgrove and La Creatura. Thank you both for your large and continued contributions, and thank you to everyone else too. You guys are absolute legends. Stay tuned for more content like this, and I'll catch ya in the next one.